having your own channel on YouTube is you can pretty much put anything up there you want. So here's something a little off the beaten path for us, but still something I think is pertinent and it's important to have, I think. So a friend of mine runs a company called PressCheck Training, and he is, amongst other things, a very experienced fireman, a major metropolitan city in the South, as well as a volunteer fireman in his current hometown, and rides an ambulance quite a bit as one of the EMTs on the vehicle. He also happens to have a doctorate in toxicology, which is not terribly pertinent to this particular video, but still it's interesting that that's what we're dealing with. Anyhow, he builds, amongst other things, vehicle trauma kits, first aid kits. He's been a friend of mine for quite some time, so when I needed one for my car, I went to him first as a guy with actual boots on the ground first responder experience. I have friends who are MDs, no insult to them, but MDs tend to work in a different environment. By the time they get patients at a hospital, which is their usual milieu, they tend to be a little bit more stable. They tend to have already had first aid. They've already been in the hands of some level of first responder, for the most part, by the time they get to the ER. And then further into the hospital they go, the more stable they are. I'm interested in building a kit, or having a possession of a kit in my car for those occasions when I'm the first responder. Now, I have basic first aid training, some first aid experience between the military and law enforcement. You know, you can't spend 30 years doing that sort of thing and not run into traumatic injuries. I've made a bit of a study of it, so I'm fair to middling, I would say, self-evaluating in dealing with somebody that has a problem right now. Stopping the bleeding, treating them until first, keeping them alive, and treating them until a first responder or professional gets there and can take over. But I wanted a kit that sort of fed into my skill set. I don't need a full surgical suite in my car because I don't know how to use most of that stuff. But I needed a kit that if I come upon an injury or a severe set of injuries on multiple people, I have at least something that I can use to stop the bleed right now. So I reached out to my friend and said, hey, do you build these things? He said, yes, I do. We went back and forth a little bit, and now he has sent me one. So this is actually my second purchase from him. This one is larger than the first one. I'm going to go ahead and unbox it here. I haven't looked in it yet myself, but I wanted to go through this process and record it on video because several other friends of mine have asked to see what's in the kit. And this seemed like the easiest way to get the information to them without having to repeat myself over and over and over and over again. So with all that said, here we go. So that's the kit. And dimensionally, does it run about, let's do it right side up so you can see it. What's that make it? Right at, I'll go with 10 inches wide. This is good video, huh? Classic entertainment. We're about 7 inches tall. About 5 inches deep. He has a variety of different cases that he can put them in, or packages that he can put them in. The interior of the car this is going in just happens to be tan, so I asked him for something like coyote. This is probably a little lighter than the interior, so there may be some discussion with the wife as to aesthetics. We'll see. Anyhow, the back panel, obviously it's covered in moly. I don't mind having this stuff in a car because I'm not carrying it around. People aren't generally seeing it where it's going to be situated. Normally I wouldn't have all this moly stuff on it. I do like having the cross, the red cross on there, so that if anybody else has to pick this up, they know what they're looking at. It adheres to the back of the headrest with this panel. That was noisy. So the panel has a variety of Velcro straps. He didn't cut them because he hasn't seen my car, so he doesn't know how long to make them. So he left them fairly long so that I can secure it to my headrest, and then I can cut it to size and burn the ends, melt the ends off. Looks like it's going to be plenty large for my headrest on my vehicle. So what will happen is on the back of the headrest, my head will be here behind the head. I'll probably put it on the passenger side. We'll sit this facing the passenger, and then the kit will go on top of that. So that seems to be well thought out. All right, let's pop this sucker open and see what we find. Velcro tab on top, push-pull zippers. Slow deployment a little bit. All right, it is not all tactical black. I'm fine with that. I want you to be able to see it. I want the first responders to be able to see it in a low-vis situation, because of course injuries like this never seem to happen at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. They happen at 2 in the morning on the side of a dark highway in the rain. So right up top we have multi-trauma dressing, in case you have a, say, severe penetrating injury to a lung. Right, you just need to stop that bleed, keep you from bleeding out in your thorax. What do we have here? And some notes for me to read later. We have stuff in here. 1, 2 tourniquets. Always happy to have, handy to have. The old 1 is none, 2 is none, 2 is 1 and 1 is none thing. A couple of Sharpies, always good for writing patient notes on the tourniquet, like what time you put it on them or on their forehead, so that other folks can read it if I'm not around to tell them whatever I want them to know. Silox, in case you get yourself shot or you have a severely bleeding injury, so it's quick clot, always handy to have. And I think these are, yeah, these are actually quick clot gauze. 1 each sterile 3x5 hemostatic Z-fold gauze with handy directions. So if you happen to be a Marine, we have instructions for you right here on how to put the Band-Aid on. You know, I'm kidding. I love my Marines. All right, what else do we have in there? A couple of Israeli dressings. These are really handy for gunshot wounds or heavy trauma, penetrating trauma through a extremity. They work great. Lots of stuff there for packing wounds. And that's all on one side. The other side, making a mess out of my desk. My wife's going to love that. We have gloves. Lots of gloves. In modern day and age, you got to have gloves if you're going to treat somebody. It's weird to think when I got in the military, nobody talked about gloves or bloodborne pathogens, and now look where we are. All right. Shears, always handy to get the clothing out of the way. Don't test these. They will cut pennies, but don't test them because then you pretty much ruined them, and then you move on. I have a couple of Leatherman, what are they called, Raptors, Razors, something like that. Those things work phenomenally well. They're really heavily overbuilt, so I may replace that. I'm not sure. Now, this is probably at the upper edge of my knowledge base and capability, but these are for pneumothorax, in case I got to relieve somebody with a sucking chest wound. Don't get these and use these if you don't know what you're doing. As a needle decompression kit, 14 gauge. You'd have to be really close to death for me to try to do this on you. I've been trained in it. I've never actually done it to a live person. But you screw that up and you're going to cause more problems than you're going to solve. So I'm glad I have them. I will keep them in here, but again, you're going to have to be pretty close to the boatman for me to get that out and start using it on you. All right, here we have chest seals. These are definitely for sucking chest wounds, and looks like we got 4 of them. So that's for 2 gunshot wounds, right? In and out on one side, in and out on the other side. Handgun bullets, in my experience at least, you don't tend to see penetration all the way through the thorax. Rifle rounds, you absolutely will. So it's handy to have. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. And then, of course, we have a couple of thermal blankets. You know, they're lightweight, they're easy to use, they're great for treating for shock. Someone's on the side of the road, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the person that was involved in the accident or got. Could just be someone who witnessed it and now they're in shock. Anybody who's been a first responder will have plenty of stories about that sort of thing. So that's what's in here. What I also like about it is there's plenty of extra room. So if I want to modify this and add additional items that I think I need to have in here, whatever they might be, you know, a cookie, I don't know. I'll probably put some hard candy in here because I've run into plenty of people having diabetic problems that just need a piece of hard candy real quick. But other little things, if you have a greater knowledge base, when maybe the vast majority of you do, than I have, You can add things to it. If you don't know how to use some of these things, decompression needles, for example, you can pull those things out. But you can modify it and adapt it for your own usage. There's plenty of space in this thing. Everything fits, but it's not hyper crowded and it's not bursting at the seams. So anyhow, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the notes down below. I will get a hold of a link to PressCheck Training for the sale on these things. He's a one-man shop and he builds them all by hand himself, so if you need them tomorrow, maybe look elsewhere, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a quality setup like this with quality components. Some of you know what you were looking at, and I showed you some really quality gear that he put in here. It's good to have. I think it's always a good idea that if you were prepared to make holes, you should be prepared to plug holes. And just driving down the road, let's face it, I mean, I've come across numerous accidents where I was the first person on scene. Some of them bad, some of them not so bad. I'm not alone in that. I'm sure other people have that exact same experience. What I don't want to ever have happen is I roll up on an accident and I've got nothing to help somebody with. Or worse yet, somebody starts shooting and I have nothing to treat people with. I want to at least have it, because it's always better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, right? Anyhow, that's it for us today. Hope all is well. Take care, be safe, and stay low.